there's one sector we know that have the highest wage jobs in the state. Hands down, there's no one that can compete with them as far as the industry goes, and that is obviously the oil industry. Not only does it have the highest wages and the highest earnings, but it doesn't tend to be particularly seasonal. Those jobs exist year-round, which, in most parts of the country they take that for granted, but in Alaska we don't. A lot of our good jobs are just seasonal, so they aren't as good as they could be if they were year-round. So that's another big plus, is they're high-wage jobs, and they also sort of represent sort of the whole gamut of occupations, from the semi-skilled to some of the most skilled occupations that exist in the country. There's the blue collar, there's the white collar, and everything in between. Whereas a lot of industries, you don't have that sort of nice mixture that provides really a tremendous variety of opportunities for kids that are just getting out of high school, kids that have 2-year degrees, to people that have PhDs in geophysics. I mean, and it's a real nice, rich variety of opportunities that exist for people that are working in that industry. When things are going well, you sort of forget about some of those other potentials that are sitting out there that could help us along and help us grow. But I think in that shorter period of time, we're once again reminded how important something like ANWR really could be for our economy, because we're beginning again to once see some of our vulnerabilities in our economy. The visitor sector is not going to just grow forever necessarily. We're seeing some stress in our economy. The oil sector is a really interesting one. Last year it was at full capacity. It was operating. It was even hard to imagine it could get any, there was room for it to grow very much more. Now there's lots of imagination because things are slowing there. Our fiscal picture is changing right now. We now are reminded that only a third of the pipeline is filled with oil, and that there's a vulnerability there. So there's sort of that ANWR is very important to our future because of what's happening now, and it would be important to us no matter what was happening, because just the potential is so large. I mean, it's hard to... Oil is a very special substance. I mean, there's really just nothing out there that can replace that. Like, Terence Cole, a historian in Fairbanks, who sort of took the broad sort of economic perspective of the state, once said that the oil that we've produced just from Prudhoe Bay itself is worth more than everything else that we've produced, dug, killed, and harvested in this state over our entire history. So it's a substance that is very difficult to replace. Even with gas, it still pales, its importance to our economy and just the benefits that it brings Alaska. Well, I think in the context of even if we look at gas, oil is just, I mean, I think people have a hard time realizing that, we are excited about gas, and gas is a very important resource and a very valuable resource, but it really does pale to oil, even today, because it's so easy to move around, and it has such high BTU value that oil is not going to be replaced by anything anytime soon. And so its value is going to remain, I think, quite high for a long, long time. So, I mean, we're just lucky to realize that we probably do have large resource. We continue to have, large reserves of oil out there in our economy. It still is like money in the bank. Whereas there are other resources that, there isn't quite that certainty. So I think, I don't think there's another substance out there. There are few other substances out there that really, I think, have that almost guaranteed long-term value. And it's, obviously if it wasn't for political reasons, I mean, that resource would have been exploited a long time ago, whereas that isn't true for gas and other things, because that there's a bigger challenge involved there. But, that's there, and we know that we could easily exploit it very, very quickly.